this relation is symmetric as well as transitive. You can verify it quite easily. For symmetry, you can see that 2 is related to 3, so 3 is also related to 2, things like that. Transitivity also, you can see all the possibilities and you will come to the conclusion that it is transitive, but it is not reflexive. But it does not satisfy property 1 because 1 is not related to 1. Note that the conclusion, this one that we are getting, that A is related to A, this is true. There is no problem with this conclusion. The only thing is that we are not getting it true for every A. We are getting it true only when A is related to something. If I have an element that is not related to anything by the relation, then that will not be related to itself, because I have to start from some relation like this, right? So that's how I will modify the property 1, so that the modified property will be a consequence of properties 2 and 3, and it goes like this. And the answer is short. Such an alternative is this. For all A and B in the set from which we are taking the element, if A is related to B, then A is related to A. This is the alternative property 1. Okay. So this completes the solution. You can see that this alternative easily follows from the transitivity and symmetry, the properties 2 and 3. Now 2 more exercises are left. The last one, 13th one, asks us to complete the proof of theorem 111, that is the fundamental theorem on equivalence relation, which states that an equivalence relation on a set partitions the set into disjoint equivalence classes. But we actually, while proving that theorem, we did not go according to the text. We proved it entirely there itself. So we don't have to solve exercise 13. It's already done for us. So the only thing left is exercise 12. So let us see what this asks. It's about finding out equivalence classes. In example, one, 3. Of an equivalence relation given in the text, prove that the relation defined is an equivalence relation. And that there are exactly n distinct equivalence classes. And these are the classes. Now in that, while discussing this example, we proved, or I think I have shown the steps of how to show that this is an equivalence relation. So we already know that the relation is equivalence. Now we have to find the equivalence classes, and in fact we have to show that these are the equivalence classes. Okay. So that's what we will do. Let me just mention it here. We already know that the given relation is an equivalence relation. Okay, so we will now show that these are the equivalence classes. First of all, let us show that these classes are distinct. Okay, so that we have at least n equivalence classes. After that, we will show that any equivalence class has to be one of them, so that there will be at most n equivalence classes. Together they will give us exactly n equivalence classes. So first let us show distinctness. Let I and j be two integers such that they lie between 0 and n minus 1 and I is strictly less than j. Suppose class of I is equal to class of j. We are supposing something, we will arrive at a contradiction that will prove us that our supposition is wrong. Note that this just after we have done what we are trying to do, that will prove that these things are distinct, because you can see that I and j have been taken in that range between 0 and n minus 1. Okay, if I and j are different, then the classes are also distinct. But we have assumed that these two classes are equal, since I belongs to class of I, because every element belongs to the equivalence class whose representative is that element. We have I belonging to class j. But what is our relation? Our relation is congruence modulo n, where n is a positive integer greater than 1. Then I is congruent to j mod n. Okay, this implies n divides I minus j, or you can write j minus I, because we have taken j to be greater than I, so j minus I will be a positive number. Now j minus I is a positive integer less than or equal to n minus 1, because you see j, since I is non-negative, so j minus I is less than or equal to j. At most, if I is 0, j minus I will be equal to j, but j is less than or equal to n minus 1, and this is less than n. At the same time, since j is greater than I, this is greater than 0, so j minus I is a positive integer less than or equal to n minus 1. That is, j minus I is a positive integer less than n. Now, what are the multiples of n in this range? Is there any multiple of n in this range? You see, n times 0 is 0. After that, we have n times 1, this is equal to n. Then we have n times 2 is equal to 2n. So between 0, strictly between 0 and n, there is no multiple of n. So how can n divide j minus I? It cannot divide j minus I. So that is a contradiction. Less than n. This contradicts, or we can write it like this. This implies that n does not divide j minus I, a contradiction. A direct contradiction to this. So our supposition is wrong. Hence our last supposition is wrong. That is, we must have class of I not equal to class of j. They are distinct. Actually, by theorem 111, they will be disjoint, but that's not the point here. We just want distinctness right now. So they are distinct. So all these are distinct. Hence, are n distinct equivalence classes. Okay, but we are not done yet. We have to prove that they are the only equivalence classes. Let m be any integer Okay. Now if m is any integer, see m can be negative also, m can be 0 also, m can be positive, m is any integer, whatever be the case, since n is a positive integer, we can divide m by n according to the Euclidean algorithm to get a quotient and a remainder. Actually the Euclidean algorithm comes in the third section. This is the first section. Anyway, you can since we have already seen the third section, the integers, so you can assume that we know about the Euclidean algorithm. So there exists unique integers q and r such that we are dividing m by n. So m is equal to q is quotient, r is remainder, and the remainder is lying between 0 and less than n, but for convenience I am writing less than or equal to n minus 1 because that's what it will be. Okay. This implies m is congruent to r mod n because the difference m minus r is divisible by n, and hence m and r are related according to our relation. So the class of m will be equal to the class of r. Now note that since r takes an integer value between 0 and n minus 1, class of r is nothing but one of these n classes. So class of m is equal to one of these. So they are the only available equivalence classes, and since they are distinct, there are exactly n equivalence classes. Thus the n distinct equivalence classes are all that we have. And this completes the solution. And just for the sake of completeness, let me just write the 13th exercise, and we will mention that there is no need for a solution. Complete the proof of the second part of or second half of theorem 111. And the solution, what can I write here? We have already done it. So this ends the first section of Herstein's topics in algebra, named as set theory. After this, there is a there is that second section involving functions. We will come to it later. We will now go back to ring theory, where we are yet to see the field of quotients of an integral domain. I already said. So next we will see that. So with this I end the video. This is me, Lucifer, from a mathematical room. Have a nice night.